G's, no design on my jacket. Work hard, now I'm changing my bracket. Talk tough, we ain't hearing that racket. Dots came in, you know how to stack it. Don't take it wrong, but I'ma need my ends though. I got tigers on my chest like Kenzo. Rail came, yeah, he putting that Benz though. Carol's here, man, you know he stay 10 toes. Big dog, man, you know I ain't worried. Bent up, so I'm talking real slurry. Got a blast, bro.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir, baby. This is Adam Caplan, the voice in your ears. And let's just say we got a lot to talk about. We got Nate Diaz victorious over Tony Ferguson at the 209 mark by guillotine. Holy shit. Like, what a week. You know, right off the bat, Chimaev misses weight. He's 8 pounds overweight. He's smiling on the scale. He's flipping off the media. He's laughing. He doesn't give any hoots at the fact that he's just missed weight. And some even reported tweeting that they saw Chimaev at a restaurant inside of the casino drinking sparkling water and also eating. Now, apparently that was the doctor's orders, but you know, when he was given that post-fight speech, it wasn't very genuine. Obviously, the accent and the fact that English is probably his third language or is his third language, it's difficult to really make of what Khamzat Chimaev is saying, especially at the fact that he's just always harping on the fact that he just wants to kill everybody in the UFC. It was hard to tell how genuine he was, but we got to take his word for it. And the only thing that we could possibly do in Chimaev is trust that his next fight, he's going to fight at 170 pounds. And he'll make weight on top of that. And, you know, if his next matchup is going to be against perhaps someone like Colby Covington, he better have a plan in terms of how he's going to make weight, because that's not going to fly with Colby, and the UFC is going to learn their lesson and bring in an alternate. So Chimaev misses weight, shuffles up the whole card. Nate Diaz obviously went in the back and said, if you want me to have a new opponent, you're going to pay my ass. And that's what happened. Cha-ching for Nate Diaz once again. Cha-ching for Tony Ferguson. Cha-ching for Kevin Holland, Li Jilang, and D-Rod as well. And I'm sure Chimaev, but definitely gave up 20% of his purse. Wonder who that 20% went to. Did it go to Nate Diaz or did it go to Kevin Holland? Hopefully Nate Diaz, right? Because that's who he was scheduled to fight. So just an absolute shakeup. In the end, the UFC puts on the card that was supposed to happen. Maybe not the D-Rod versus Li Jilang fight, but Chimaev versus Holland is a great matchup. And Nate Diaz versus Tony Ferguson, I don't think there's many words I need to use to describe it. I think less is more. Legendary. What a legendary fight, having both of those guys in the octagon together who have given absolutely every single last ounce of themselves for the company and for the fans. And that's Nate Diaz versus Tony Ferguson. So look, right off the bat, you have D-Rod versus Li Jilang. Didn't feel like D-Rod did enough to win that fight. Thought that Li Jilang actually showed great boxing, great head movement, great speed. His physique was to the nines. His suit was to the nines, which he didn't get to show off because they canceled the press conference, which is another story. Water bottles were being thrown, etc. But you guys know your MMA by now because you tune into AC every week, so you know what happened. Let's get back to the fights. Li Jilang and D-Rod just didn't feel, you know, like he did enough. Aside from that jab that Daniel Rodriguez was constantly poking at Li Jilang with a force, I felt otherwise that Li was much more dynamic in there and showed more of an assortment and an arsenal in his mixed martial arts. And look, D-Rod claims that 180 pounds is his weight class, felt he looked a little fluffy in there, and said that it was the best that he's felt in there. But look, I didn't think it was that great of a performance on his end. I actually tipped my hat more to Lee because he was the smaller guy in there and also showed that he was the more impressive of the two. But because of the weight discrepancy, I think that his strikes just clearly didn't look as significant to the judges, which made them favor Daniel Rodriguez. For my wallet, though, it worked out great because Daniel Rodriguez was in a lot of my parlays. And, you know, let's just say I've been cold, which is why I haven't been talking about my betting. But this week I was successful. I'm plus $200. So we're going to Disney World. Props to Li Jilang, props to Daniel Rodriguez. Definitely both of those guys got paid. Would have liked to see Lee perhaps squeak out that decision, but that's the way she goes. And then we got Khamzat Chimaev versus Kevin Holland. And the reason why I called this a great matchup is because both of these guys throughout the pandemic were fighting very often and for very cheap. And because of that, they built their resume up very quickly. Also, Kevin Holland knows how to talk. He's got great banter. He's also saved a few people the day of his fights. And in between fights, he saved a few people. So Kevin Holland is like a superhero. So Holland and Chimaev made their name off of fighting quite often during the pandemic years, over the last 2 years, we'll say. And they fought cheap, like I said. But as those wins were racking up and the notoriety was racking up, they were starting to cost more money, which is why we've seen them fight less often, especially at the fact that if they win, they have to pay them double the money, right? So look, Chimaev comes out right out of the gate, blasts that takedown right away. Kevin Holland is scrambling. He's scrambling. Looks like perhaps he's going to create some separation, and that just didn't happen. I mean, I was telling Brett before, when Chimaev comes out there, you see every single hair and every single muscle fiber in his body standing up and firing on all cylinders. He has a work rate and an intensity that I've just not seen in the octagon before. And a tenacity and a savageness to him that we just haven't seen before, even in Khabib. Khabib was a lot more tamed and a lot more stoic in his approach. Chimaev is more so like a barbarian or a savage, the way that he goes about his prey in the octagon. Ended up winning against Kevin Holland by Darce choke. Kevin Holland was fighting for his life as long as he could, but I think if this matchup would have happened perhaps a little bit later in Holland's career, maybe it would have been a bit closer, but, you know, hard to say, because by then Chimaev might be on a whole other level. He might be, you know, as they say in Dragon Ball Z terms, in like God mode. So we'll see what happens with that. But that's what happened with Chimaev and Kevin Holland. Kevin Holland did the right thing. He took the matchup. He's got big balls, Kevin Holland. He didn't need to go in there against Chimaev. He was supposed to fight Daniel Rodriguez. That is a totally different fight. He was preparing for a guy who throws 8 strikes a minute, you know, in each round. Okay, so 8 times 5, about 40 strikes, 40 significant strikes a round. Okay, that's what he was preparing for in Daniel Rodriguez. But instead, Kevin Holland ended up fighting Chimaev, who's one of the best wrestlers in the UFC, has taken the least damage of every fighter in the UFC, and is an absolute stud and a monster, and took a totally different fight. And you know what? Credit to Nate Diaz, because he did too, but felt like it was a little bit more of a bigger risk for Kevin Holland, you know, going against Chimaev than Tony Ferguson going against Nate Diaz. So that's what I got for you on the Chimaev and Kevin Holland. Props to Kevin Holland. I know we got paid. Chimaev, you got work to do, man. You're a savage inside the octagon, but you got to make weight. The fans aren't going to respect you. Your peers aren't going to respect you if you're not going to make weight. And I understand that you want to kill everybody in the UFC, but you're not going to get a favor every fucking time you fight. You're not going to get a favor like that. The way the card shuffled, this event, due to you missing weight, happened because the UFC was trying to fuck Nate Diaz and put him against you in a very unfavorable matchup. And the only reason why this ended up working in Nate Diaz's favor, and, you know, it ended up working for Chimaev as well, is because justice was served. And Nate Diaz got the matchup that he was supposed to get on his way out from his legendary career in the UFC. He wasn't supposed to fight you, Chimaev. He was supposed to fight Tony Ferguson, and that's what happened. Call it divine intervention, call it poetic justice, call it as you will, but Nate Diaz got the matchup that he wanted, and Chimaev should consider himself lucky, because I actually think for once Conor McGregor was right. Chimaev didn't deserve to fight Kevin Holland, but Kevin Holland deserved an opponent. Kevin Holland deserved a payday, and he deserved an opportunity. So consider yourself lucky. I know you want to kill them all, but first you got to kill one thing that is the hardest thing to kill, and that's the scale, baby. So that's what I got for you on Kevin Holland and Chimaev. Congratulations to Chimaev. A savage performance. An absolute stud in the octagon, and Kevin Holland will be back as well, ladies and gentlemen. So look out for Big Mouth, your local superhero and crime fighter, and somebody who's going to stay in the UFC's welterweight and perhaps the middleweight division, just like Chimaev will. And if Chimaev doesn't make 170 next time, a la Kelvin Gastelum, you'll be going back up to 185, and you know, then you'll have bigger fish to fry, which won't be a problem for Chimaev. I think that he'll be quite successful at middleweight as well. And then here we have it. I'm going to take a sip of that silver bullet. No happy dad this week. Sad, but part of the game. Just spilt some on myself. If you're watching the video, you could have a chuckle. But my brother ended up copying me some Happy Dad. We got a variety pack and a case of banana on the way. So you'll be seeing that on the show. Maybe I'll give you a little bit of a review because not really a chill thing to brag about. Not anything my mom would be proud about or my family crest, but probably had the most Happy Dads out of a lot of folks in Montreal and probably Canada. But as they would say, not that chill, not the chillest thing to brag about. And here we are. We got Nate Diaz versus Tony Ferguson. I mean, could you believe it? Justice was served. And it was served steaming hot, baby. It wasn't cold. It was steaming hot. It was a big steak, nice mashed potatoes, maybe a little Happy Dad on the side. That's what it was, baby. Why? Because Dana White and the UFC were trying to screw Nate Diaz. They said, forget about this love-hate relationship. You want out of this contract? You don't want to re-sign? You want to go on and make bigger bank accounts and make more M's without us and we don't get a cut? Fine. You get Chimaev. That's who you get. And in a favorable matchup in somebody who's probably going to obliterate you and embarrass you in front of everybody and hopefully, God willing, lower your stock. But we all knew that wasn't going to happen even if that was the case. If we were to cut out Nate Diaz, okay, and cut out Kevin Holland and replace them, and that's how their matchups went. If how Kevin Holland lost was how Nate Diaz would have lost, that's what we were expecting. That's what we were expecting. We were expecting the Last Supper. We were expecting the Last Supper of Nate Diaz, where he was going to go out and get absolutely starched and wrestle fucked by Chimaev and then lose by submission or ground and pound. That's what we were expecting. We were expecting the Last Supper. But in the end, we got the resurrection, the poetic justice, the whatever you want to call it, the divine intervention of the Nate Diaz matchup against Tony Ferguson. And you could tell right away when both of these guys got in there, they were looking at each other like, holy shit, I can't believe we're here. Like, we have been slated to fight each other for so many years in our career. We have been running around in the same circles and just missing each other. And here we are on your last fight. I get to fight Nate the Great. I get to fight Nate Diaz. That's what Tony Ferguson's thinking. And you could see how appreciative Tony Ferguson was of the opportunity. And you could see the mutual respect in there throughout the entire fight. Okay. The leg kick started to add up from Tony Ferguson. But Nate Diaz was looking sharp on the feet. He threw a 1-2 in the first or second round that everybody who was watching missed. And Tony Ferguson had to smile and give Nate props because he was like, holy shit, I didn't even see that, man. Like 37 years old, Nate Diaz still got it, baby, when he's turning it on. So you could start to see, though, that the leg kicks were adding up and perhaps Nate's pace after the second round was starting to slow up a bit. And then one of those leg kicks landed and Nate started to back up. And he started saying, fuck that, fuck that. And I got up on my couch and I said, you better not fucking quit, Nate. Don't quit. This is the fight. This is your fight. This is your final fuck you to the UFC that they were supposed to give to you. And he starts putting on the antics. He starts, giving an ode to his brother, Nick Diaz, in there, who, as we know, Nate has always wanted to be hit like his big brother, Nick. The way he boxes, the way he throws his punches, his constant pressure, being involved in triathlons, being involved in jiu-jitsu. He's always wanted to be like his big brother, Nick. And then you started to see some of those antics, similar to what we saw in the Anderson Silva fight or to the Robbie Lawler fight. But it also looked like he was going to quit. And Mark Goddard did an absolute great job in not jumping the gun on that and stopping the fight, understood what Nate Diaz was doing. That's a guy who knows his fighters, who does his homework. He knew what Nate was doing. He wanted a break. He was buying some time. And Tony Ferguson had the respect and admiration to give Nate that time. He didn't have to. He could have rushed him right away and finished him, and that would have been the end of the fight because Mark Goddard already saw that Nate's posture looked like he was ready to quit. But he knew the antics. But if Tony would have put on that pressure, it would have been donezo. It would have been over, and we all would have been furious. It would have been terrible. And in the end, that didn't happen. And then lo and behold, Nate Diaz bites down more on that mouth guard, starts to throw those 1-2s down the middle, throws a couple of slaps in there. And you could start to see that the look in Tony's eyes, although the whole time had respect and admiration in it, started to see notes of how he looked against Justin Gaethje. That look of as if the train is coming towards him and he's not necessarily in there having as much fun or being as comfortable as he once was. I think that Tony was comfortable with the fact that he was in there in a legend like Nate Diaz and understood the magnitude of the storyline, but we didn't see that sinister smile. We didn't see that grin, that grin of the Reaper that Tony Ferguson usually puts out there in the octagon. We started to see a little bit of that wide-eyed deer in the headlight, a bit uncomfortable. And I'm not saying he was phased. He wasn't phased in any way. But I think we can agree that we have seen our best moments of Tony Ferguson in there, which is why I was so happy about the matchup with Nate Diaz, because I truly thought that Nate was absolutely going to win, and I thought that Nate won every round. At most, maybe he lost the second. Or maybe it was the third. I believe it was the second. Kevin Iole, though, had it the first round, which I didn't agree with at all. But it depends on how much you're going to add up those leg kicks. But a part of me thinks like Tony Ferguson understood the magnitude of the situation, always understood how the Diaz brothers have felt, always understood their gripe with the UFC and in how they were the sacrificial lambs. I mean, Nick Diaz was suspended for 5 years from USADA for testing positive for marijuana, and now the guys could smoke weed basically up until the fight. I think you just can't show up in the octagon high. And they were the sacrificial lambs. Imagine folks in California that went to jail for so many years for marijuana, and then now they're out, and now weed is legalized and it's all good. It's kind of a similar thing. And those guys have constantly been the sacrificial lambs in the UFC and never fought to the establishment's beat. Always had the beat to their own drum. I almost said beat it. Not going to do that. They've always done things their own way, the Stockton 209 way, the Nick Diaz Army way. And that's what we've always loved about them. And although they were the sacrificial lamb, they always showed us that you got to keep it real and you got to stay true to you. And even though the establishment is going to want you to do things, to make them and the fans happy, no chance. I'm not going to go in there and fight this guy or that guy who doesn't have a name so he could come and fight off of me. And I know that the Diaz brothers have also spoke with a little bit of delusion, but at the end of the day, Saturday night at UFC 279 was Nate Diaz's moment. He was supposed to go in there and get slaughtered by Chimaev. And then in the end, I don't know what happened, if we're living in a simulation, we're living in the Matrix, or God was on Nate Diaz's side, but the card shuffled and he had the dream and legendary matchup that we have wanted to see for years against Tony Ferguson. And although perhaps there were moments where you could see that both fighters were just a step behind of what they used to be, they gave us a moment in history that we could never forget. I've been watching Nate Diaz since 2007. Okay, we're 2022 now, almost 16 years later. I'm 30 years old, almost times 2. I still have the pleasure and honor to watch Nate Diaz fight, and I get it. Oh, he's taken so many punches. Look at the way he talks. Look at the way he looks. Look at the way he sounds. How could you like that? Look at a guy who's done that to his career. They don't get it. I practically grew up with Nate Diaz. Well, I mean, watching him in that sense. And there are a few guys from my generation that we're going to get that respect, love, and admiration for, that we grew up with them in their careers. You think that the McGregor era was crazy from about 2012, 2013 up until, the Floyd thing? Dude, Nate Diaz was in the UFC 5 years before that, fighting beasts like Josh Neer, Melvin Gillard, winning the Ultimate Fighter 5, which is one of the toughest seasons of all of the Ultimate Fighters. So Nate Diaz has just been giving us so many memories, even the ones that he got his absolute ass kicked, like Rory McDonald, or Dos Anjos, etc. Benson Henderson, which was a tough decision. Not sure if he fought Dos Anjos, though, but had, that fight against Benson Henderson that he got screwed on the pay, etc. But then comes back and puts on great performances, like against Kurt Pellegrino, slaps the triangle choke down, starts flipping the middle finger, beats Melvin Guillard, he's flexing, beats Tony Ferguson by guillotine, he's flexing at the 209 mark, a legendary moment in history. Congratulations to Nathan Diaz, who's going to go on and challenge boxers now. I think he's going to fight Jake Paul next. If Nick Diaz could get out of a UFC contract or is out of contract, perhaps they do the Diaz brothers versus the Paul brothers. You know, maybe they bring the WWE in there to help juice it a little bit more. Money is going to be made. Justice is going to continue to be served for Nate Diaz. You got Real Fight Incorporated, which is going to be a boxing, kickboxing, jiu-jitsu, and perhaps an MMA promotion where Nate could put on his peers like he has continuously done in the past, getting guys like Chris Avila fights against Artem Lobov on his undercard against Conor McGregor. If Nate Diaz were to sign his life away to the UFC in exchange for Nate's guys to all be on the roster, he would do that. Nate has been a martyr for his own mixed martial artists, and he's been a martyr for the fans as well, and he's been a martyr for his fellow UFC companions. So I tip my hat to Nate Diaz. He's just a very selfless guy, and I think that a lot of people have seen Nate Diaz move in a way that actually comes off as very selfish, but I actually think that Nate Diaz is a selfless guy. So congratulations to Nate Diaz, who's had an amazing career in the UFC. Having legendary fights with Conor McGregor, a great fight against Michael Johnson, a great fight against Anthony Pettis, you know, almost beat the current UFC welterweight champion Leon Edwards with about a minute left, almost beat him. And, you know, there's not a hell of a lot else I could say about Nate Diaz, except thanks for the memories. Looking forward to what you're going to do more on. And this pod almost seems similar to me like the Tyson Fury one. It feels like the end of an era, but we know in the back of our minds that these guys are such crazy motherfuckers that they're going to be back one way or another, especially Nate Diaz. He's going to be back. And now there's talks about Fury going to be fighting in a 60-40 split against Anthony Joshua. So, you know these guys, fighters at heart, and as Brett said at the beginning of the show, hard to kill. And that's my overall assessment about Nate Diaz, and that's my overall assessment about Nick as well, is hard to kill. And lately, I haven't really liked putting Nate and Nick in the same sentence because Nate has always been in the shadows a little bit of Nick Diaz, but you know, for as long as I could remember as of lately, Nate has surpassed his brother. He has shown that he is actually perhaps the main character right now in the Diaz brothers' quest. He is now the Mario to the Luigi, perhaps. And you know, I attribute that a lot to also Nate coming out of his shell and not always trying to act like his big brother, because although he looks up to him with the most admiration, Nick always hasn't done the right thing. And I think that as we started to see the differences that Nate and Nick each share, that's when I think Nate started to surpass Nick in terms of that likability and that superstardom. So congrats to the 209. Congrats to Stockton. Nate Diaz gets the guillotine over Tony Ferguson at the 209 mark at UFC 279. Nate Diaz is victorious. He is the one who sends the final fuck you to the UFC, but didn't leave that way. Left with his head held high, left with respect, left with love, left with admiration for the UFC, but also admitted that he doesn't look to be back anytime soon. And didn't leave perhaps the establishment thought he would have. So there is a lot more to Nate Diaz than the eye meets. Congratulations to Nate Diaz. That's what I got for you. No Q&A today. I love reviewing these fighters. I love it when I get the opportunity to talk for 20, 30, 40 minutes about one specific guy that not only the fans love, not only does the brass love or the establishment or sometimes hated Nate Diaz, but somebody that I love. On AC Radio, unfortunately, I'm a little bit biased in what I like to talk about, you know, and I'll talk about Nate Diaz all day, baby. So thanks a lot for tuning in. Check out the edit that I made. It's on YouTube Shorts. It's on my latest Instagram reel. Made about a 1.5 minute edit on Nate Diaz, just telling a little bit of a story of what Nate has been up to the fight up until right up until the weigh-ins. So that was a great edit. I loved it. I loved the experience, and really felt like an artist in there. So, you know, call me Bob Ross, AC Radio. We're out.
Big cheese, no design on my jacket. Work hard, now I'm changing my bracket. Talk tough, we ain't hear that racket. Dots came in, you know how to stack it. Don't take it wrong, but I'ma need my ends though. I got tigers on my chest like Kenzo. Rail came, yeah, he putting that Benz though. Carol's here, man, you know he stay 10 toes. Big dog, man, you know I ain't worried. Bent up, so I'm talking real slow.